All right, let's get started. First, introducing myself. I'm Aditya Vijay Kumar, a second-year computer science undergraduate at NMIT, and I'm a part of the Hack Club. I'm a part of the design team presently. And further moving on. So this is obviously a Hack Club NMIT initiative. We are doing a lot more workshops extensively nowadays to cover things that are not usually done by other Hack Clubs. We want to stand out. And that is why we're doing something different this time about portfolios. And I'll get to the objectives in a minute. Great. All right, so talking about the objectives. I think it was already outlined in the overview itself, but I guess some people had expectations that this will be more of a design thing because I'm into designing. However, this is actually a lot more technical. This is going to be a bit more about structure and what works really well in the world out there. This, I think, is a lot more relevant to students rather than professionals, but I think even once you are a professional, a working professional, this will still remain relevant to you. And moving on to the next slide. Trust me, by the way, the presentation is very short. We will not spend a lot of time on this. I will be getting straight into actually setting things up. So talking about the tech portfolio norm right now, it's all about GitHub, at least for the most part. I think most of you guys will agree that any hackathon that you're trying to participate or any of the technical fest pretty much requires your GitHub username, and that's for a good reason. GitHub has a great utility purpose for a developer, and it has a lot of value to it. And that is the reason why it's pretty much, let's just say the convention right now, if you want to showcase your portfolio. But that is not necessarily the best way, and I'll talk about that why. So drawbacks of using only GitHub. I'm not saying that this is a replacement to GitHub, but there are certain drawbacks of using only GitHub. That is, first thing is customizations. So obviously, let's say we're talking about portfolio, right? Let's say you have about 3 to 4 applications that have developed, some bots, a couple of web scraping apps, etc., etc. All the repositories are there in your GitHub. But showcasing them, it is not easy. Your customizations, you have a README page. It's a markdown file at the end of the day. So there's only that much you can do there. Of course, there are several tutorials that show you how to make it more interactive and fun, etc. But I think you will agree that the customization, so there is, it's time consuming, and there's not a lot of creative space for you to play around with things and make it look the way you would want probably on a website or something like that. At the same time, you get only access to the code, not a working demo through a GitHub. And that is another drawback, because let's just say, of course, a lot of the technical recruiters and the HRs will have an idea of the code and they will be all right navigating it. But there will be certain cases where certain people might not have a strong technical background. Certain professors or something from universities, if you're trying to apply for a grant, the government officials, etc., etc. In those cases, GitHub becomes a complete, disaster. It's hard to share it, even though you might have several applications over there that are amazing and beautiful. You will end up facing some kind of an issue. Now, so the solution, or rather the approach that I am talking about today, is about having multiple. I just have to go back to that. Apologies. About having multiple subdomains. Now, the first question when I say having multiple subdomains and all of that will be why? What about SEO, etc., etc. And we'll get to that. Don't worry. We are going to address those questions first and then get to the whole idea behind it. So now, firstly, as you can already understand, I'm talking about having a portfolio website and trying to justify how you can make it better, what approach you can use, and kind of have a really well-rounded website to present to people to showcase that you're a true developer. Of course, this is mostly for technical people, and I did say that this can serve a lot of non-technical people from non-technical backgrounds who are probably doing a BBA course or all of that. It is possible, but the use case is something that I will not be talking about. You will have to kind of figure that out on your own. By the end of the session, I'm sure you will be able to do that. But yeah, this is primarily for mostly technical people, because at the end of the day, Hack Club is a technical-oriented club. So moving on, now talking about SEO, because that's the biggest question that comes up when you talk about having several subdomains. Now, there has always been the heated debate saying what is better, having a subdirectories or subdomains. which is better, etc. if you want to organize things and host a website in a rather complicated fashion? Well, and the answer to that is not very clear because Google has been kind of on the fence for all of these things all the while. So it has been saying that it ranks all of it, the Google crawling ranks all of it in an equal manner. And that is true technically. But then the reality is a lot of SEO experts have figured out that a subdirectory helps with SEO a lot more than a subdomain, because a subdomain kind of functions as a separate entity on its own, which can be a drawback. We'll talk about how it does not really have to be a drawback in this case. But of course, as I've already mentioned, we are going to be going with the subdomain approach. So now, reasons to use subdomains. Let's talk about that. Now, the purpose. What are we trying to do here? We are trying to create a portfolio. That's the whole idea here, a technical portfolio for people to showcase things. And for that, really, subdomains is not necessarily a bad thing, because let's face it, people are not really going to be searching for your web application. You might have done some kind of a Python bot, a Telegram bot, whatever. No one's going to search specifically for your application, on the internet, and it does not really have to be listed. What is going to be the most important in a portfolio is, of course, your landing page, your home page, or whatever you want to call it, the main domain that you're going to be hosting on the top level domain. Give me a minute. So that's going to be the most important part. And for that, this does not really have to be a bad thing, because you have to only optimize your website for SEO purposes, just one of it. That is, let's say if I'm going to get a domain called altevjkumar.me, I have to only optimize just that website. I don't have to do all the subdomains, because at the end of the day, the reality is I know that won't be as important. Of course, you can take a bit of extra time to optimize certain specific subdomains or certain applications that you think will be the most important or relevant. But the reality is it's not really a huge problem as you might think it might be. Apologies. Now the next one about maintenance. So what I'm trying to, of course, put forward here is that we showcase, as technical developers, showcase all of our several applications that we develop as separate subdomains. For example, let's say if I have 3 applications, I will put the demos of each of those on 3 different subdomains. For example, let's say I have an application called Atlas. It'll be on atlas.altevjkumar.com or whatever. And let's say I have another application called Mello. It'll be mello.altevjkumar.me. So we put each application on different subdomains. And this especially helps a lot with maintenance. You will notice this because as I go through the whole approach that we're going to be taking here, it'll ease things a lot, because you will have separate pretty much folders sitting on your server that you can modify, delete to whatever you want, and it will not affect the other folders or structures. Whereas if you go with the subdirectory approach, it's going to get very complicated very, very quickly, right? Because there'll be so many folders, so many routes to manage those. It's going to get harder and harder as you add several applications. And the flexibility you get with the subdomain approach is just hard to beat. The next thing is that this is not for products. So if you're going to, let's say you've developed an application and that's almost production release ready, and it's brilliant, you want a better SEO ranking for that, then you're better off getting a website, a separate domain for that, right? You wouldn't want to have it on a subdomain. This is just for things to showcase your technical skills, what you've done in Python, what you've done on JavaScript, Node.js, etc., whatever it might be, just to showcase those small, tiny things. This is the approach that we're kind of going with, having subdomains for it. If it's a product that's already production ready, then, of course, you're just better off going with a separate website, a domain on its own. Now, the next thing that's going to be important when we're talking about, kind of having the best portfolio is virtual identity. So let's talk about what is important for establishing great online presence, because as we all know, a lot of, especially with this pandemic situation, everything has been happening virtually on the internet, and our identities online has become that much more important because a lot of the interviews as well are happening online, not really in person anymore. So there's literally just one important thing here, just only one guiding principle, and that's your username. That's pretty much all of your identity. So the key here is that a lot of people tend to have several different usernames or whatever it might be called in different websites, on different social medias. And this is where the problem usually lies, in establishing a strong online presence. And that's something that you have to try to counter as much as possible. Having a username that is, if I may just read out on the slide itself, as short as possible, and maintaining a uniformity and ubiquitous presence. That's going to be the key things, the two key things. Having a username, if you're lucky enough and if you have a very unique name, then you can just pretty much go with your first name itself as your username on all of the social medias, that is Instagram or Twitter or WhatsApp. I mean, not WhatsApp, sorry, Facebook, GitHub, LinkedIn, wherever else it might matter. But if you're someone like me with a very generic name, then you might have to include your last name as well to kind of establish a strong virtual identity. And the reason is, since it's called a virtual identity, it doesn't even have to be a real name. A lot of developers go with a funky and cool, gamer name, which is totally fine too. Just that you need to make sure the same thing is used across all your, different platforms. And by the way, some people think that on LinkedIn you cannot change your username, but that is actually possible. You do have an option that says modify the link of your particular profile. On top right, if I'm not wrong, so you can modify your LinkedIn username as well. So pretty much all the platforms that matter: GitHub, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, 4 platforms on top of my head, which I can think. Make sure you have a username that's uniform across all. Personally, I'm going with Aldev Jaykumar everywhere, because that's the only way I can kind of stand out and have a strong presence. Because Aditya is, I think, most of you guys will agree that it's the most generic name in India. 7 people have it. Therefore, do what suits you, what floats your boat, and what sails your boat. Just go with that, and just make sure you go with a username that is kind of clear-cut, simple to easy to remember, and suits on all social media platforms. And of course, we are going to be using the same name to have a website as well. And we will be talking about that in a bit. Okay, I think, unfortunately, my slides got deleted. Never mind, actually, that was pretty much the last slide that we had to cover. We'll be getting straight into kind of cracking up code, and I'm not really code, but technical aspects to set up our website and all of those things. Let me just quickly switch off my video and turn on the screen share. Just give me a moment. I hope my screen share is visible. Can someone drop a message in the chat box? Great, okay. So I have managed to create a gist file on GitHub, which I will drop in the chat right now. Great, okay. So I have dropped a link to the gist file that I'm referring to right now. We will be putting up on the Hack Club GitHub as well. At the same time, it's a bit rough at the moment because I did not have enough time and bandwidth to completely polish it. Apologies on my part for that. But in a couple of hours by tonight itself, this will be perfectly fine. And those of you who are watching it later on, a recording of this, I'm very sure that it won't be a problem. And I have been informed that a lot of people don't have a GitHub account, the education account, the student developer pack right now at the moment. Therefore, I'll be going a bit faster, and I won't really be waiting for people to follow along. And I hope that's okay. If someone is following along, though, however, please do mention in the group, the Zoom chat right now, so that at some points, if you do need some technical assistance or help, I can kind of slow down a bit, because as you can probably see in the gist file, there are quite a lot of things to go through to set it up. It's a pretty long process, and hopefully we can get it right as well, and we don't run into any errors. And at the same time, a short disclaimer: in case we run into certain errors, I'm not the greatest pro at let's just say cloud computing. Therefore, I'll try my best to answer your queries, but if not, we will definitely get back to you via email or whatever else that works. And for those who will be tuning in later on to a recorded version of this, I'll make sure to link certain gist files or whatever that helps in the description. All right, let's get started. So the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, will be that you will have to have a GitHub Student Developer Pack account. Now, I cannot emphasize enough on how important and how useful this is, because there are so many great offers and several different tools available. It's just amazing, guys. Please be sure to sign up for this. The process is very simple. All you do have to do is upload your ID card later on and just use your NMIT email ID or your university email ID to log in while doing so. That's pretty much it, and you will get access to it. It's very simple. We will be primarily focusing on a couple of the offers offered by GitHub for today's session, and that is the Namecheap 1-year free. I just realized my code is visible on the screen, but we already used it, so I hope that won't be a problem. But yeah, we will be focusing on the Namecheap domain registration or the .tech that you do get, either one of these two domains that you get for free for 1 year on the GitHub Student Developer Pack. You can avail one of those. It's very simple process. Since I've already gone for my Namecheap domain, I will be setting up a .tech domain. However, I'll just open up this link here. And I put in the chat box as well. It's very simple. In fact, you actually don't even have to be a part of the GitHub to register a free domain. All you need to use is your university email ID, and you can get it right away. Just a side note, you will be prompted if you want to set up GitHub pages. Just skip that process if you're going to follow the steps that I'm going to be doing today, because GitHub pages is not at all relevant to what we are doing today. So you can just skip that. The process is just very simple. You just enter your domain here and click next, and you're done. It'll be set up. And this will be kind of your dashboard. And we will talk about configuring the name servers, all of that in a bit. So let me just go ahead and register a .tech domain. I will be doing this for a website that I have thought of called Mellow Creatives. I see, I think I'm not signed up through my GitHub. So apparently I got to add to the cart, and at the end of it, I get to choose the student developer account. That's right here. It's the order. I'll just pause the screen share. So that was quite a lot of process that I had not anticipated. Apologies on my part. Great, so it is configured. Let's see if I can find it in my account. So in the meantime, I think I can show the same process on Namecheap if you're going to be registering for the .me, which you should be. Let me just talk about that actually first. So you get access through Namecheap to register for .me. Unfortunately, I have already registered mine, as I mentioned, therefore I cannot show the step-by-step process for that. But trust me, it's very much the same, just a few things that differ. And it has become pretty popular to set up portfolios with the .me TLD. And some of the free TLDs available, I'll just put in the description and the chat box, are .tk, .cf, and .gq, I guess. So you could, if you just want to test it out, you could do it with one of those free domains as well. No issues with that. And if you once you log into your Namecheap account, you will have this option of setting up name servers. And just set that to custom DNS. It's by default to the Namecheap DNS itself. And I've already mentioned it in the gist file. Just copy these 3 name servers. It's just ns1.digitalocean.com, and just keep changing it to ns2, ns3. Add those 3 name servers, and you should be good to go. Once that's done, of course, you have to go back to your GitHub Student Developer Pack and avail your $50 free that you get on DigitalOcean. Now, a side note here, I have actually availed this code offer already. You will notice that once you try to sign up for this, it will prompt you to actually add $5 first to your account, and only then you will be able to redeem those $50. So essentially, it's about 380 rupees or 390 rupees, I believe, if I'm not wrong. You will have to pay that much, and only then the $50 credits will be added to your account. But I highly recommend you to go for it, because it's a very small investment in something that you're getting you're getting the domain for free already, and you're getting the $50 of credits for free. So a $5 is all that you got to add. And additionally, we will try to link a Hack Club NMIT referral code. And if I'm not wrong, if you use a referral code, you get up to $100 credits for free. So that's a lot of credits, and we'll hopefully try to link one. And using that, if you sign up, it'll ask you for a referral code, right, while signing up. If you just enter the referral code, you can get up to $100. But again, another side note, you will have to put up $5 in your account to avail it at the first go. So once you've done that, you should be able to log into your DigitalOcean, and you will get a similar dashboard like this. Let me just check on my .tech domain. It's taking a lot of time, which I had not anticipated. I'm not sure why .tech is acting up so much. It's not even giving me the edit option to change these. All right, since I already do have a Namecheap .me domain added, I'll continue with the process. I do not want to take up more of your time. So the next thing we will be doing is creating a droplet on DigitalOcean itself. Now, before we do that, there is one process that I would highly recommend before, and that is creating and generating and saving a SSH key. Now, talking a little about SSH keys, if I'm not wrong, it stands for Secure Shell Process or something, if I'm not wrong. It's a better way to authenticate and log into remote systems. Essentially, what a server is a remote, a digital server, a computer sitting elsewhere in the data centers of DigitalOcean, and you're trying to access it. So you can either do it with the password, or you can do it with SSH. And SSH is highly recommended. All you have to do is just open up your terminal and type in this command, like, do not change your root folder or anything like that. Let it be users and whatever username is on your PC, and just enter this command that's present over here, SSH Kagan -T and RSA. It will generate a key. It will ask you if you want to add a passphrase. It is recommended that you do add a passphrase because that increases the security level a lot more. So therefore, you can just add a passphrase, whatever it is, remember it, it'll ask you to enter twice, and that's pretty much it. After that, what you'll have to do is navigate to your folders. Let me just quickly do that. Go to your users folder, whichever user you're logged in as, and you'll have a .ssh folder. So that is users, whatever your username is on a Windows, and .ssh. I believe it's something very similar to that on Mac. I will update the gist file with it. And you will have these two files. That is a file which is with the ID, whatever something else that is generated, a hash code of sorts. And you'll have another one that has the .pub extension. If I just quickly open the properties for this, you will notice that so the name over here, as you can see, is just ID followed by some kind of a hash code. It's the same over here, but this one has a .pub extension. Now you can kind of forget about the one that does not have a .pub extension for now. Just open it using a notepad. I won't do it at the moment because I do not want to, for safety reasons, I do not want to reveal even my public key. Although it is fine to reveal your public key, I do not want to do that at the moment. So just open it with a notepad, and you will have access to your public key, and that will come in handy in the next process, that is setting up a droplet on DigitalOcean itself. So this will be your dashboard on DigitalOcean. Just go up here, and before that, actually, I had mentioned a step over here which I forgot to clarify on. Once you have your SSH key, just navigate to your networking panel on DigitalOcean over here, and you will have a tab called domains, and you can just enter the domain that you have registered and add it over here. Actually, I can still go ahead and add the domain that I've just registered, and this will generate a dashboard and interface of this sorts. We will have to modify a couple of these things, and we will do that in just a minute. But once you have your domain registered, go back to your dashboard and just click on create and select droplet. Now there are a couple of settings over here. We'll talk about each of them. Now the first option is called choose an image. I believe one of my seniors, Sagar, previously explained a lot about Linux in the previous workshop about administration and file structures, but that is pretty much it here. You get a couple of operating systems. By default, it's selected Ubuntu, which we'll be going for, but you have an option to upload a custom image. What that really means is you're going for a modified version of Linux that probably suits. This is only comes into picture when you're going for something that's a very large scale application, but that's here that you would configure that over here, choose a custom image. It's a complicated process, we won't get into that, but for now Ubuntu is good enough. We do have a couple of other options, but just go with Ubuntu. And a plan, of course, you can browse several plans that DigitalOcean offers. You will be going with the cheapest one right now, that's basic, and $5 per month. Now you do have an option to add block storage. Essentially what that means is adding more storage capacity to your server. So by default, the $5 has 25 GB SSD. You can add more if you please. For the data center region, we will just choose Bangalore. Now VPC. So I'll just talk a little about VPC, what it means. We'll of course be choosing no for the present purpose, but VPC is kind of like the best example that I've come across, an analogy and parallel of sorts, is that you can imagine these data centers to be like kind of a residential complex. So when you have no VPC enabled, that you have not checked the box for VPC, it's kind of like sharing a room with, having roommates in your apartment. You have some other people coming in and moving around in the same apartment space. It's kind of like shared hosting, but not exactly. There are certain differences, but when you have VPC enabled, it is basically having an apartment of your own. It provides great amount of security, and you should be going for this once again only if you have a production level app. Additional options, we do have IPv6. Essentially right now, everything on the internet, IP is Internet Protocol, of course, and I'm sure you guys know about IP addresses, etc. So it is estimated that we'll run out of IP addresses on the IPv4 protocol very soon. So IPv6 is recommended, but I will not check the box at the moment because I believe my internet service provider does not support IPv6 at the moment. So you need to check with your ISP if they do support IPv6 or not. I'm not quite sure, so I'm not going to risk it by creating and wasting you guys' time. I'll just not check that box. User data, you can just enter some data regarding your Linux setup. I'll skip that too. Monitoring is just storing certain logs. I'll skip that as well. Now SSH keys, this is where it comes into the picture. You got to click on the new SSH key, and you'll have to paste your public key over here. That is, navigate to your folder where it is users, your username, .ssh folder, and open the file ending with the .pub. That should be the extension actually. It might prompt as a Microsoft Publisher file like here, but it's actually not a Publisher document at all. It's just a text document. Open with a notepad or whatever it is, and paste the code over here. And you can name your SSH as well. I already have an SSH configured over here. This is my current laptop. It's already configured, so I'll just check that. But it's a very simple process. And in fact, you have some more info and insights on how to do it over here on the right-hand side. So just follow the process, add it over here, have an SSH key. SSH is much, much better for signing into your servers. Of course, you want to create only one droplet, and you can choose to name your host. I'll just call it the same thing, Mellow Creatives. Tags, this is again in case you have a lot of droplets, you would want to add some tags to navigate it. Projects, you can create projects. It's just like categorization, honestly, nothing very relevant. Backups, we are skipping that too because it's an additional $1. Let's create a droplet. And in the meantime, I'll talk, while this is setting up, I'll talk a little about the difference between using DigitalOcean and something like Heroku, which is another very popular alternative. Now, Heroku is actually, if I'm not wrong, it's termed as, so it's basically providing additional features on Heroku. That is, your database is taken care of. A lot of the other hardware and infrastructure is taken care of, whereas DigitalOcean is the complete raw server of sorts. That is, you get the infrastructure as a service. That's what happens over here. And the advantage is that you get a lot more control, but of course, the disadvantage is that it can be a lot more complicated to set it up in the right fashion. But if you just follow the process, it does not have to be that big much of a pain. But that's the main difference. If you're getting into the technical field, I would recommend using DigitalOcean in the beginning because you will get familiar a lot with how servers work and all of those things, which is pretty helpful. Thereafter, of course, you can probably go to Heroku if you want to just quickly deploy apps. It's very different, but since we're also getting $50 credits with the GitHub Student Developer Pack, might as well use it for this one. So it just got set up. I'll just click on this. This is the IP address, of course, that's generated for the droplet that we just created. I'll be copying this, of course. And I'll actually be destroying this droplet at the end of it. So I don't mind revealing all of the data or any other information. Now, of course, the next step is going to be installing Termius. Now, if you go back to your GitHub, I'm going to be using a lot of tools from here. You will find Termius right over here. So now Termius is basically an app that is very, very helpful and very, very handy. I'll just open it up quickly since I already have it installed. It is just a command line prompt of sorts, a CLI interface that is very, very helpful and very, very handy. It has some great nifty tools and just makes the interface a lot better than using the the local command prompt. All right, so it's relatively a lot more simpler to kind of interact with the whole server using Termius. It's just better. Look up the features. I won't talk about it. I'll get straight to work because we're running out of time. So now, once you have installed Termius, just log into your server. That you do this by typing SSH followed by root, since you log in for the very first time, and @ followed by a server IP address. So I'll just be sure to once again copy the IP address. And actually, we can. This is where it gets simpler. So if you're using a command line prompt, you would have to do that. You would have to do SSH root at this, and it'll just verify that. Okay, I have to type in yes. And you can see that I'm logged into the server now, but this interface is going to get very, filled with hassles. Let's just say that using the command line prompts, I'm going to exit it over here, and we're going to add it using Termius. I believe it's not added the details of configuring this on the gist. I'll just fix that in a moment after the session, but it's very simple. All you have to do is click on new host, add the address of the IP address of the host, of course, and a label. We'll just call it Mendo Creators again. Group doesn't need any of those things. SSH, of course, we're going to enable that. It's going to be port 22 by default. That is what SSH uses. And username, we do not have one configured yet, so it'll be just root. That'll be the root folder that we'll be logging into, the root user that we'll be logging into. And the keys, of course, I've already configured and added my SSH key, but all you have to do is click on plus, and the plus key option over here, and choose the file. Navigate to the same place, select your private key this time around. So you want to use your private key to be able to log in to the server itself, and that would be the one without the .pub extension. So just click on that, add some details like the label, just so that you know what it is. And in case you have entered the passphrase, you need to re-enter it over here. That is very important. Public key is again optional. You don't really have to enter it over here. And that's pretty much it. You can select that particular key as soon as it's added, and you're good to go. You can just save it. And if I click on this now, it's connecting me. I show you want to connect since it's our very first time. Add and continue, and we're connected. We're logged into the server right now. So the next step is going to be actually securing the server. By default, the root user has a lot of administrative privileges that can be easily misused in a destructive way. And in fact, in a day-to-day, usage purposes, for whatever applications it might be, you don't need most of it, right? So we are going to be skipping all of that. We are going to be securing it by creating another user, providing it adding it to the sudo group. That is, if you know about Linux, you of course know that if a user has sudo privileges, it can do a lot of the installation and other, almost admin level privileges and other accesses. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be permanently disabling our root user. So for that, first thing, you just got to go through these commands, set of commands that's already there in the gist file. Just simply type add user, whatever it might be. I'm going to say add user Aditya, of course. He'll prompt you to add a new password. And just a couple of other details like full name, etc., whatever it is. Not really required. I'm just going to skip all of it. And that user is created. So next what we're going to do is we're going to be giving it the sudo privileges, and we do this by passing this command. And a handy little tip, if I may give, is basically if you use Control-Shift-V, you can directly paste anything in the terminals. That's something that you can enable. And of course, you can even enable right-click, but I have disabled it at the moment. So let me just go ahead and enter this. Of course, replace demo over here with your actual username that you want to create. And that's done. me see if I can minimize this a bit. I hope the font is visible. Is it too small? Okay, I'll just continue, and we'll be logging into the new user now. So that is just type SU hyphen followed by the username that you want to log into. I believe I made a mistake here. Okay, we are logged in. As you can see, it says Aditya at Mellow Creatives. So I'm logged in successfully. Followed by this, we will be doing a couple of things. We will be making sure that the SSH is included. Now, we obviously want to be able to log in using our SSH key. This is just a verification, actually. This was supposed to be followed previously when DigitalOcean did not allow you to configure SSH properties while setting up the droplet itself. It should be available, but this is just a fallback process to ensure that it's already out there. What we're doing is creating a .sh folder and providing certain administrative privileges by using this chmod 700 command. And then we'll use Nano, open up Nano as editor to check if the authorized keys has a key or not. So it looks like the key is not over here. I'm going to just pause the screen share and add my SSH key. Of course, this is going to be my public key that I enter over here, and then I'll resume the share. Now we will be running one other command, that is this one present right over here. This is to basically disable any modifications to the SSH key in the future, right? So we do not want anyone else changing the key, and we're going to just permanently sort of disable that. Once that's done, we can just exit this. And now what we're going to be doing is opening up the SSH config file in our root user. So as you can see, I just typed exit and I'm back into my root user. And we're going to be opening the config file, and this sits in, of course, /etc/sh/sshd config. I've mentioned all of it in the gist file. So we just open that up, and we have to make one small change to this. If we just scroll down below. So as you can see over here, it says permit root login, yes. Now we're going to change this to no. That's pretty much it. And this is because we do not want to be able to log in back into a root user whatsoever. Verification, yes, exit. And once that's done, we have to restart the SSH service, of course. So that's just another command, service SSH restart. Once that's done, we will open a new terminal. This is pretty handy once again with actually, this is the connection failed. As you can already see, I tried logging into the root user, the connection failed, but I'll edit the host right now. I'll change the user to be Aditya, and I'll save it, and I'll click on start over, and it should be successful. So we're logged into Aditya now. That means everything has worked. I'll just run a sudo command to be sure that everything's working fine. I might as well skip to the next step. We're running out of time. So I'll click on sudo apt update. That's the next command that we have to run. And I'm running this for my Aditya user. That is to just check whether sudo privileges have been enabled. And of course, I logged in a different window to be sure that the login and SSH is all set up fine. Asking for the password. And it's all working fine. So what I can do now is close the other one. I'm just closing it. So I'm only logged in using my Aditya user right now. And basically, this is what you want to be doing. Open a new terminal window and log into your whatever user that you've created. Let's just say demo, and be sure the sudo privileges are working, and only then exit the root terminal. Because once you do so, you will not be able to log back into your root account whatsoever. So once that's done, of course, I just skip to the next step. We had to run the update. I'm done with that, and we're going to start configuring our Nginx. Now, Nginx is, of course, the reverse proxy. What a reverse proxy essentially is that, let's talk about the HTTPS protocol. Of course, there are going to be two relevant protocols, the HTTP and HTTPS. HTTP works on the port 80, if I'm not wrong, and HTTPS works on port 443. So what happens is all the requests that we send, the end user, we send to the client itself is going to be, to the server itself is going to be from these ports, that is port 80 or port 443. So Nginx acts as a reverse proxy where it detects, tries to figure out which particular application trying to access. Let's take the example of Google. So there's support.google. Of course, I'm pretty sure Google works in a different way, but I'm just taking the example for this particular purpose. There's support.google.com, there is mail.google.com, and there are several other applications. Now, each one, let's say it's going to be definitely running on a different port that is on the server internally. Now, Nginx acts as this reverse proxy where it detects that you're trying to access support.google.com and ensures all of the requests are happening on the same port 443, which is for HTTPS. It ensures you're connected to the correct internal port, whatever it might be. If you have done local development, you'll have localhost 3000, etc., etc. It's in a similar fashion. The application will probably be hosted on a different port, and you just want to be sure that it's happening perfectly, and that's why you use Nginx. There were quite a few options available previously, but Nginx is pretty much the standard right now across the industry. So let's go ahead and install that. It's going to ask if you want to continue, to say yes. Okay, this is done. So we'll just check the status of Nginx, whether it's working fine or not. And let me see, I'll have to try this. Okay, it's enabled and it's working fine. So that's great. Let's exit by pressing Control C. Now, what you have to do is set up the firewall first. So basically, at this moment, if we go to our server itself, let me copy that. It says welcome to Nginx, but the problem here is that we can access any port for that matter. We can access port 2000, whatever it is, and it'll just keep loading forever and it says the site can't be accessed. Of course, it can't be accessed because there's nothing on port 2000. But the problem is, as you can see, I could enter port 2000 and it kind of worked. That shouldn't be happening. We will be using firewall to make sure only the 2 ports, that is along with SSH. SSH runs on port 22 if I'm not wrong. So we'll be allowing that, followed by the 2 ports, that is HTTP and HTTPS, to ensure no other protocols can be accessed by, ports can be accessed by the end user. So let's first start by enabling the firewall itself, that is UFW. And we want to quickly make sure we allow SSH first. And that rule has been added. Now we can check the status. It should be allowing only SSH. As you can see, port 22, that is what is enabled right now. So what we're going to do, run the command next is sudo UFW allow Nginx full. So full basically helps both HTTP and HTTPS protocols to be added as rules. Let's run the same command once again. So status, you can see it's full. Don't worry, basically both the ports will be allowed by default. Now we're going to get to the slightly more complicated process, which is actually configuring Nginx. This is where I had a lot of hard time recently when I tried doing this. But what I'm going to be showing you is a kind of a tried and tested protocol. It has worked for me, and I'm sure it will work for you as well. So the first step that you're going to do, if you just check out the gist file, I've mentioned it all over there, is create a directory. So now by default, people use Nginx usually just for one domain, right? And the configuration for that is way different. You can directly modify the default files and you'll be good to go. That is, let me just scroll down here. You could directly modify the folder setting in www/html, whatever it is, change it there, add your files, and you'll be good to go. But since we are going with subdomains, we will have to do some additional configurations, and that's why we'll be setting up separate blocks like you'd probably do on an Apache server. So we're going to be doing that. Let's run this command first, that is create directories if it's not already there for whatever example.me domain that you have created. So that is going to be, let me just change that since I have my creators.tech. Basically, what you can do at the end of this, once it's configured, is that you could directly add your HTML files in this HTML folder itself, but You'll probably be using Node.js applications, so we'll talk about how you can configure that. And then we just want to make sure that this particular user, that is Alta, which I'm logged into right now, has access to be able to make changes. Great, once you've done that, we will just be sure by passing the 755 command as well. And now, technically, you could add HTML files. As I mentioned, you could just navigate to this particular folder here and add your index.html and it'll show up. But since we are running out of time, I will skip this process. What I'll do is directly start kind of figuring out how we can set up our applications. So now the difference I'll talk about. As I mentioned, you can add your index.html file in this folder and it will start serving it. So let's move on to the next step, that is configuring the actual file, the server block. So now if I just check if you can see the code over here, in the location we are saying try files, try_files URI, etc., etc. This command will basically go and search for files in this location. If you want to run a Node.js application or anything running on a particular port, you would want to change that and add the certain other settings that is by default based on the Nginx documentation. You would want to mention whatever the port your application is running on, 5000, 3000, whatever it might be. You just mention that particular port and you'll be good to go. And I'll kind of be doing that right away because we do not want to spend too much time. But I hope it's clear. What I'm trying to say is that in case you want to just serve static HTML files, you can do that. There are a number of ways to be able to. Termius actually provides a feature that I cannot cover right now. It's beyond the scope, where you can transfer files kind of in an FTP manner to this particular folder here itself. And you can just have a static website. But in case you're doing a Node.js application or something that's more dynamic, has a backend to it, you would of course will be hosting on a particular port. And for that, you will be changing your configuration, which is what we will be talking about right now. It's all explained in the dist file. No need to worry, nothing confusing at all. So let's skip to that step actually. So the way Nginx is configured is that you have the sites-available where you would be setting up your server blocks, that is your different blocks or different websites that you're hosting over there. And you'll have your sites enabled, which you will have to link it to. The thing is, basically, sites enabled is pretty much something you'd never touch. That folder is something that Nginx manages on its own at the backend to make some changes based on the code, etc. The functionalities are added automatically. You only are allowed to modify the file in sites available, and automatically it's kind of configured and Nginx takes care of the rest. But of course, you have to run a command to link the two. We'll quickly go through that process right now. And of course, guys, please be sure to use the same domain everywhere. I've just used example.com, example.me actually. Just replace that with whatever domain that you're going for. Now we just open the nano editor for this. I'll be skipping and copying this particular contents instead. I'll change this to 3000 because I'm probably going to be hosting on 3000. Okay, so moving forward, once that's done, as I mentioned, we will have to link it to the sites enabled directory. Nginx takes care of the rest. Let's see, we'll have to change it. Done with that. Now, at the end of this, basically, we have two server blocks. That is the default, which we haven't touched. And in case you're going for subdomains, please just don't modify the default file. We'll be adding different, server blocks to different files instead. We'll be configuring those. Now, since we're going to be adding several subdomains, there is one particular variable that we, not a variable of source, but one configuration that we have to modify, and that is the server names hash bucket. We have to just change that. So just type this, paste this command right here into your terminal and navigate down to where server buckets hash is mentioned. It's right there. You can just remove the hash key next to it, and it was a comment right now, and now it's a valid command. So save that, save the changes and exit it. That's it. Once that's done, we can just check the configuration. Okay, looks like the configuration test failed. Let's just check on that once. What went wrong? I see. The server name, I forgot to modify that. Now you can choose to skip the www config, but I'm just adding it in any case. I'm not quite sure why my Terminus is hanging up. Now let's check if the configuration is working fine. Hopefully it is. Okay, there are these backslashes here from the markdown, which was causing the entire fuss. Okay, great. Finally, we have the test successful. Apologies for that error on my part. It was pretty silly. Okay, so let's restart the Nginx whole system as well. Now, once that's done, we can start setting up subdomains. So for this purpose, I'll just create another one called aditya.mellowcreatives.tech. And to do that, basically follow the exact same process. What you do is create a file in the sites available folder, as I mentioned earlier. We first create a directory, we first create the directory at the www root folder of from which Nginx serves the files, and then we further go ahead and create a configuration file in the sites available and link it to the sites enabled part. These are the same comments, guys, just change it with the subdomain. I'll be doing this exact same thing right now. So let's say I'm trying to, of course, create aditya.mellowcreatives.tech. So that would be something like simply changing this here. Once again, you want to make sure this particular user that I'm logged into has access to this folder editing privileges. Now you might be questioning why we're doing this, adding the particular user, and I tried setting it up without that, and unfortunately I could not edit the files after that in the directory. So it's definitely recommended to go with this. Start a SO here. All right, so that's done. Now let's go and configure a file in sites available folder. This time around, I'll be sure to make sure that there are no backslashes or any of those things coming into the way. I'll change this to, I'll just be 5000 itself over here, since I have the other application running on port 3000. Let's once again be sure that the configuration is working fine. Oh wait, before that, of course, we have to link the configuration file with the Nginx sites enabled to enable it. The test is successful. Let's once again restart Nginx. And now we move on to step 10, where we start loading Node.js applications, in this case, that the demo that I'm going to be doing, to our server itself. Now, of course, you would want to have a website ready for this. I'm just going to showcase you this one handy little website that I came across. It's called Start Bootstrap. Start Bootstrap. You can just use the customization over here tool, online building, website building tool, to kind of create your own website, whatever it might be, configuration, colors, etc. And you can download the HTML sort of code for it. I've actually followed the same process and already done this. And I have a GitHub repo sitting with the whole code ready. So we're going to be cloning that into a folder called apps. I just like to create it. It's not necessary. It can sit in your root directory itself, but it's better to have a different folder for it. So let's do that now. Of course, first we have to install Node.js for this purpose. So let's do that. Great. Now, once that's done, I'll quickly go ahead and open my GitHub to clone the repository that I've already created. Enter your username and password, and you'll be able to just follow the same process as you would to kind of clone it. Once it's done, it says clone. Let's see. There's a folder. Great. So now what we will be doing is installing something known as PM2 processor. So process manager. So basically what this does is it keeps the app running no matter what. Even if the server restarts, this will ensure that the Node.js apps is running, it's running at all times, no matter what. So we want to quickly install this, and we want to install it globally. So we'll be doing it with the G flag. Oh, looks like the Node.js was not correctly installed. Great, so this is done. Let's run this particular command now to install PM2. Now, once that's done, I can just type PM2 start whatever is the name of the particular Node.js file. In this case, I have a file called app.js. So I will just run that command now. Script not found. Let's just check on that. Oh, it's index.js, my bad. So that is running right now, but however, it's running on port. Let's just check on that actually. Give me a minute to make sure it's running on the correct port, so that I'm not quite sure if this will work, although I have added the name servers, because it does take up to a couple of hours, so it's not working yet. So once you add the name server entries, I have done it. Let me just show you. It's on another screen. I have added the DigitalOcean name servers over here, but I think it has not yet propagated on .tech. Unfortunately, I've already used my Namecheap, so I cannot resort to that yet. But in the meantime, I think we can still keep moving forward into configuring couple of other things. Now, the reason I mentioned reconfiguring here, of course, don't get confused. Earlier, we were just kind of loading default static files from the folders, whereas now we're trying to run the actual Node.js files. The difference here is, of course, in the location, the commands passed over here. we are passing something else. We're passing the port on which it's running, whereas here we are trying to get the file locations. That's the main difference over there. Now, once this is done, hopefully if it's all configured right on your setup and you're able to get the name servers working, you should be able to visit the website and kind of get that running up. And of course, the subdomain works in a very similar fashion. All you have to do is just make sure whatever port you've mentioned in your configuration file over here, your app is running on the same port. And of course, you're using PM2 process to kind of keep it running at all times. Let's run this command. Actually, I did forget to run it. So PM2 startup Ubuntu, once we run that, it'll ensure that the script is, even when the server restarts, PM2 also restarts with it. And whatever application was running continues to run once again. So the reconfiguration here is just changing the location. And of course, once again, we have to run the same commands to test it and make sure it's working and restart Nginx. Hopefully that all goes fine and works perfectly fine. Now to load different different Node.js apps, you can just use Git. It's the easiest way. All you have to do is, as I said, create a folder like I have called apps, and you can just start cloning several directories into that, and you should be able to kind of load each application on a different subdomain. So this is where the beauty of it comes, right? Really, what you can really do is basically have several applications. Let's say you have around 3 web applications, full stack applications that are ready. You can deploy them you can put them in different folders, of course, clone them to different folders, have them running on different ports, have separate configuration server blocks on the Nginx for each of them, and be able to run all of them at the same time. Any changes, it's as simple as just once again making git pull request to whatever changes you have done on GitHub, and it works perfectly fine. There are no hassles at all. This is where it becomes very powerful. And if I may add an additional tip, in case you're doing something that cannot have a demo, it's not a full stack web application, it's something else that does not have a demo, you can just simply add a documentation page for it, where you cover extensively as to what's really happening there. Because documentation and white papers, I'll try to link a couple of guides on that, really helps you stand out. Because a lot of tech companies, when they see that you are capable of writing great documentation and white papers on the go, your kind of value as an employee increases that much more. So this is the whole part, kind of what I wanted to kind of cover with this particular webinar as the objective, is to be able to set up separate subdomains, have your demos working over there, and kind of link it all on your primary landing page itself. Now I've already done this. Let me just quickly share that, what I've managed to do with the same thing. So I have a website right now configured for ativijaykumar.me. I think you probably saw it earlier on my DigitalOcean as well. So now in my portfolio, currently Atlas, it's a blockchain-based app that I've developed, and I have a simple link over here that says visit demo. And if you notice, actually, I did not have a time to develop the landing page, so I went with the same bootstrap link that I showed you earlier. I've just configured it to all the variables. And here, if I click on visit demo, it takes me to atlas.ativijaykumar.me. As you can see, it's a subdomain. It's on the same domain, but it's a subdomain. And here the application is actually running. There's a demo, working demo right now. And this is just one instance of it. As your portfolio increases, as you test out and develop several applications, you can keep adding each one on a separate subdomain. And all you have to do is make sure your primary landing page, it's beautiful. Of course, this is kind of ugly at the moment, but you would want to polish it, really make sure it stands out, have some fancy animations probably, and optimize it for better SEO ranking, and you're good to go. Once your primary website, whatever it is, starts ranking really well, you're pretty much set, and all your demos are going to be there to your portfolio. People can access a live demo, and that adds so much more value to it. Now, this is something that even professors from universities elsewhere who probably they're trying out a different field, you can send it to them as a part of the university that you're applying to, as a part of your resume, and they can visit this particular website of yours, check out the demos, check out the documentation, and you will really benefit from it. That is the primary aspect of this particular webinar. Now we will be doing a few more things, of course, and let's get to that actually. So SSL certificates is what helps you to have that HTTPS that I do over here. And you get this kind of padlock symbol on Google Chrome and Firefox as well, if I'm not wrong, that says your connection is secure, because this works on the HTTPS protocol. I'm pretty sure most of you guys already know about this. So you can get pretty much a free SSL certificate using Let's Encrypt. That has become a popular way. Nobody usually really pays for these SSLs, of course, unless you're using something like GoDaddy, where in which case it's just a shared hosting service. Excuse me. So let's install Let's Encrypt, and we can start configuring that as well. This is just super simple and easy. All you want to do is install sudo add Let's Encrypt first. Just press enter to continue. Once that's done, we want to just update the system to be sure. Okay, once it's installed, the rest of the process is very simple. All you got to do is just type sudo certbot, put the nginx flag, followed by, you want to add the nginx flag because the config file has to be modified, but Let's Encrypt actually takes care of it. So all you got to do is put the -d and enter your domain name. In this case, it's going to be menocreatives.tech. And you would want to add the www config as well. And just hit enter. Just click agree. And would you like to share? No. Certificate, and that's pretty much. Let's see, perhaps this is because of the name servers not yet being configured. But just running these simple commands is what will help you, kind of obtain an SSL certificate. It's very simple, and you can perform. These are only for 90 days, and can perform a dry run by running this particular command. And at the end of 90 days, you can just renew them by following the same process itself. That's kind of, for the most part, pretty much it for the structure that I was planning to explain. Nginx is kind of at the core of this, where you use it as a reverse proxy to be able to configure several subdomains, have a portfolio site of your own, and run live demos and have documentations for each of them. You could serve static files from HTML, or have change the location in the config part and just have it all set up as I mentioned. We will move on to the next part of it. Just a small addition that I thought would be great to have your professional email accounts. That is something like, let's say I've registered menocreatives.tech right now. So support@menocreatives.tech or mail@menocreatives.tech, which is pretty cool and something that you can share with people and you can use. Now we will be using something known as ImproveMX for this, ImproveMX. It's very, very simple, the configuration. I'm sure you guys can do it on your own, but I'll just walk through that process as well. We're running out of time, so I'll just be sure to be quick with this. So all you gotta do is just type in the domain name, menocreatives.tech, and type in the email at which you want to receive all of these emails. Once that's done, your account will be created. You will have to verify it. And once you verify it, there are certain changes you will have to do on your DigitalOcean actually. So you'll have to come into your domain part of things, domain side of things. Actually, another crucial step that I haven't mentioned is, while you're adding your subdomains, you need to add a record to your DigitalOcean as well. So just if you go to your if you click on your domain that you've created, you'll have create new records. Go for the A and type in whatever it is. In this case, I've done Aditya. So just type aditya.menocreatives.tech and leave the IP. Just select the one that you have already configured to. In this case, it's menocreatives. The droplet that you've created, and click on create record. And that's pretty much it. You can do this for the www part of it as well. So you have to add a record each time you create a new subdomain, so that DigitalOcean knows it's part of this as itself. And to configure ImproveMX, you have to delete any existing MX records. In this case, we don't have any, so it makes it simple. Just click on the MX over here, and you'll have to add these certain values that's mentioned over here. So the value is mx1.improvemx.com, and you have another mx2 which has a priority 20, while the first one has priority 10. Host remains just at the rate. Let's configure that right now. So we added one, let's add the next one as well. This priority is of course 20 as it's specified over here. Now it recommends adding another txt record as well. So let's do that. The value is given and the host remains just at. And just these three records have to be added in a DigitalOcean. Of course, this is in networking and domain. And once you have this configured, you have to, of course, verify your email. I'll just pause the screen and do that. I'm just verifying my account right now. Once that's done, the remaining process is also very simple. First, you have to make sure that two-factor authentication is enabled on the email to which you're trying to redirect it. So for this, I hope it is enabled. Let me just go into my Google account and check. So you have to turn this on for two-step verification. And the best way to do this, of course, is to kind of have something like Google Auth or authentication to have it generate another code for you to verify it, or you could just add your phone number and do it. I'll actually skip this process since I already have Improv MX. I'll log into that and show the further steps. So you'll have to go into your Google account and create an app password. That's what's required. If you go to security, I've already put the link in the gist file itself. You have an app option called app passwords over here. It says none, let's create one. So in this screen, it says to select an app and device. App is going to be mail and device is going to be Mac. That's what Improv MX's settings are going to be, configuration. And this is actually the app password. I'll destroy it at the end of it, so I don't mind revealing it. So just copy that and hold on to it, paste in a clipboard somewhere. I just paste it in Notion I have open over here on another screen. So after you do that, you have got to go to your Google settings, your Gmail settings, my bad. And click on see all settings, go to import account if I'm not wrong. So accounts and import, and here you get to add another email address. As you can see, send mail as, you have an option called add another email address. Click on that, add whatever email address it will be. In this case, it will be something like aditya@mellowcreatives.tech. And be sure to check the box that says treat as an alias. And there are these other configuration values that I've also mentioned over here. So the SMT remains Gmail, because all you're trying to do is just actually forward the emails. Username will be my Gmail account ID. And the password will be actually the app password that you created. If I'm not wrong, it just stays TLS connection. Yeah. So you just click on that and click on add account. You'll have to verify your email ID, of course. And once you do that, you will receive an email and you'll basically have this option, which I will show you right now. So you get these several options over here, like you'll have the several aliases that you have configured available from the drop down when you click on compose an email. So you can choose whatever it is, send email as that, receive emails on this same Gmail account itself. And it simplifies the whole process a lot more. So through this, you can have a very kind of a professional approach as well to all the things that you do, especially if you're trying to freelance and you have a portfolio of your own. This is a great way you can have your own email account, a professional email account at your own domain, and share it with people and basically configure all of those things. And that's actually pretty much it for today. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. I'm so sorry there were a couple of hiccups here and there, but the gist file that we will be sharing at the end of this, we'll have it all covered. And I hope this was insightful. And if you have any questions, be sure to email me, or you can follow us on Hack Club NMIT and DM us there. And we will be basically kind of answering your questions that you do have. I'm so sorry for a couple of hiccups here and there. I unfortunately did not have enough bandwidth to test out on my own, and we ran into a few things here and there. The name servers did not really work, but the gist file actually will be very helpful to you, I'm very sure. So I did try this on my own, and I ran into several days of errors. It took me like one full week to kind of fix it. So with this gist file, I'm very sure that you will be able to get things moving pretty quickly. Please be sure to sign up for the GitHub Student Developer Pack, avail all the features that you have while you're a student. And also, please be sure to follow Hack Club NMIT on several different platforms. Thank you so much. This was your host for today, Aditya Vijay Kumar. I'm signing off. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for holding this great session. Like anyone who has a query, then they can ask us later on. Like we'll be sharing the recording as well, so that if they face any issue, then they can surely contact us.
Yeah. Any
thank you so much,
guys,
Aditya, for holding this interesting session, a kind of new one. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So we can wind up, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks all for joining.
Yeah. Thanks all for joining, guys. See you. All right, so this is an additional part that I really wanted to include because, as you probably saw, we ran into a couple of hiccups during the webinar, and I couldn't really figure them out or solve them live. So this is just an additional part where I'll be going through some of the things. So unfortunately, the name servers did not propagate immediately live, but you get this coming soon page, which I'm running on that particular server block port. And we also have the subdomain working, which was aditya.mellowcreatives.tech. That is working too. And if you just quickly notice, actually, however, the mellowcreatives.tech website, the domain has an SSL certificate, which is why you have this padlock symbol, whereas the aditya.mellowcreatives.tech, the subdomain, does not have it. It says it's still non-secure. That is because I have not installed the SSL certificate for it yet. So let us quickly do that. If you remember in the webinar, there's a small error during this process. However, I'll just go through that quickly. So I'm going to open up Terminus just like previously once again. And I'm going to run this command. I already have it set up as a snippet. It's asking for the sudo password. And as you can see, it's performing a challenge to check if it's really propagating, and that has gone through. So I definitely want to redirect all of my traffic to the HTTPS itself, and that's it. The certificate has now been installed. So if you just follow the same process and your name servers have been updated, then you'll not run into any problems. Let's see if we can refresh this. Now you can see we have the SSL certificate working on aditya.mellowcreatives.tech as well. So that's pretty much it, guys. Just one last thing that I quickly want to go through. There was some confusion regarding the subdomains as well. So the DNS records, right, for the primary domain as well as the subdomains, they need to have a record, as you can see over here. And for the primary domain, all you need to do is just type an @. It's specified in the gist file. However, if you want to create a subdomain, let's say if I want to create an API at the end, the subdomain api.mellowcreatives.tech, all I should be typing in the host name is API. So you can even get a prompt over here. As you can notice, it says api.mellowcreatives.tech, and just select the particular droplet and you're all good. Create the record and it'll be done. I've also created the www record as well. That is not necessary, but something that I personally do, and if you wish, you could add that as well. But that's pretty much it. The whole idea here is, of course, that we create separate directories as well as separate server blocks for each domain as well as subdomain that we want the particular server hosting. You could actually host multiple domains on the same droplet. It's not really recommended, but if you really want to, you can do it. So that's pretty much it with this webinar. I hope it's been very helpful to you, and please make sure you follow Hack Club on various platforms. You can also join our Discord server. Links for all of it will be in the description. Thank you so much once again.